Man oh man, this is a film I've been looking forward to. Bill and Ted Face the Music has finally dropped us an official trailer as of June 9th, 2020.
69, dudes!
And this has really been a long time coming, with the first murmurings of this film being planned way back in 2010, only to struggle with distribution, financing, and all sorts of other issues too. But finally, 31 years after the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a third official sequel is in the motion to finally release this year on the 14th of August. Now, with there being so much development time, there is of course all sorts of information that's already been revealed about just how this movie will go. And of course, we've got direct footage of the trailer itself, so why don't we get into it? So starting off, let's talk about what this movie actually is, because although it is a trend to bring back all things 80s in a reboot that tries to overwrite the original, Bill and Ted Face the Music is absolutely not that. In fact, Ed Solomon, co-writer to the originals and this film, has directly said that this is the opposite of a Bill and Ted cash grab. Instead, it's more a matter of they love these characters and they wanted to visit them again as middle-aged men, thinking it would be really fun, funny, and sweet. And really, that's pretty much all you can ask. And while yes, co-writer Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson do return as writers, so do all sorts of the original acting cast as well. Obviously, the main duo Keanu Reeves and Alex Winters are pretty hard to miss, but we also have William Sadler as Death, making a comeback from the second film, as well as Captain Logan, Ted's dad, who we may have seen stuck into the trailer that I'll show off a little later on. And also Missy. There's also the potential of George Carlin being brought back through archival footage of the original films, which is seriously intriguing. So no, he's definitely not been recast. We'll cover more of the secrets of the cast as we get into it, but for now, let's hop into the trailer to pick out some pieces of this third installment. And we start off presumably at the finale. Every Bill and Ted movie so far ends off with the climax being a big performance of some sort from the iconic duo, scaling up from a single history report at school to a televised battle of the bands seen across the world, and now up to a full-scale in-person concert performance. Though, for the sake of narrative, we're gonna skip these micro shots as they mostly just give us a visual preview of things to come. Don't worry, we'll come back to pick it frame by frame later on. So, it's been 25 years since Bill and Ted's televised success of the second film, and though the credit sequence of number 2 suggests that they were a global hit from that point on, somehow in this movie, none of that was the case, with them never getting off the ground and, in the modern day, only scaling down to an audience of 40 who were not really into it. As the band who were intended to unite all people and open up to a future of good times, as was experienced in the distant future of 2691, clearly this is a timeline disaster, and something must be addressed. The very next shot we get to see is that futuristic kind of review room we've seen from the original film, but now with a whole new slick of paint and new authoritative powers looming overhead. And Bill and Ted have been summoned to discuss this revelation of their failures. Also, do note this assistant lady over here, who, though we don't see again in this trailer, is somebody we can probably identify with a little bit more digging into the confirmed cast. See, usually this kind of futuristic guide would be given to the role of Rufus, played by George Carlin in the originals, but of course, he's not with us anymore, and so the role must be passed on. And in the cast has been confirmed to have already happened, with a new character Kelly being introduced and described as a messenger from the future who has a warning. Presumably, she's the one who travelled back in time to collect the boys and bring them here. But what's a particularly sweet gesture from the creators of this film is the choice of her name. Kelly's name is based off of Kelly Carlin, George Carlin's real-life daughter, as a way to pay tribute to the late actor. Now, isn't that just heartwarming to hear, and really put some faith into the respect this third film is hoping to achieve, you know? It's not just a shallow money grab. Anyway, as this scene continues, we see that Bill and Ted's uniting catchphrase no longer works on the people as it once did. Something is clearly wrong, and presumably there's new work to be done. In dialogue, it is then explained that Bill and Ted are failing to unite the world, and that they must write the song that will save the world and the universe, which Bill and Ted have been struggling to put together all of their lives. Also, this lady here is said to be the great leader, the most powerful person in the universe. So she knows her stuff, but can't fix it herself apparently. Here's a quick clip of I assume that finale again, but we'll talk more on that later. Because here's an interesting shot of these future scientists witnessing a hologram on Earth with a marker highlighting North California. Now, I'm not exactly expertised on American geography, but both Barstow and San Dimas, the main location of the modern Bill and Ted adventures, are both down near the south. So whether this directly links to them while they're on the tiny tour or something, or if this is just happening on the sides, I can't really tell. But it's interesting that this shot is shown as the dialogue mentions the need to save reality as we know it. The stakes are scaling ever higher. And right next, we get to see reality has a bit of a skew going on, with Bill and Ted on a cluttered highway to Pasadena, standing on a bus that could be a tour bus with a cello on it, and most notably, down on the road, a couple of characters warping into existence through time. One looking like some kind of Roman or knight, but he's got a gun? Oh, that's probably just a wristband. And another guy who's equally hard to distinguish as maybe a Native American or a caveman or an other tribal guy. Or he's simply scared of the dude with a weapon. I mean, that makes sense too. Here's the dudes again on the bus and the classic teleporting phone booth, perhaps going off again for one of the first times in a long time from the two's perspective. As for where they are, your guess is as good as mine. Clearly the future, but maybe it's just some glorified garage. Moving on, we then see Bill and Ted talking in a library of electric guitars. Easily an expansion of their own, as their passion for music clearly hasn't subsided, and they've grown into full-sized adult men that can get things now. There's even banjos and acoustic guitars. All sorts of music and string instruments. Whether they've actually bothered to learn them though is a different thing entirely. Though I guess it's also possible for this to be a futuristic library of their successes, and the two are discussing this still in the future straight after their first confrontation. Here's a shot of them all dressed up and presumably at a wedding, and with the backing of microphones, sheet music holders, and at the very least a visible gong, you can imagine this was yet another gig for the two at an event that's probably similarly displeased. Whether this event includes people we actually know is anybody's guess at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a throwaway scene. But the boys still have their iconic arms out pose. Okay, now we're getting into the real new stuff. These characters are our new expansions into the modern day, being the aged up daughters of Bill and Ted from the end of the second movie, Thea Preston and Billy Logan, originally known as Little Bill and Little Ted in that old film. And another heartwarming piece of trivia, though probably more obvious, Bill and Ted named their daughters after each other. Anyway, these two are set to have a bit of a bigger role now, being a couple supporting characters to the adventure and being pretty pivotal to Bill and Ted's lives, with one such story synopsis from Reeves in 2017 saying that, among other things, their marriages are falling apart and their kids are kinda mad at them. And another says that along the way they will be helped by their families, old friends, and a few musical legends. So really, those two just kind of wrap up their arc quite nicely there. Early on, there's a bit of a disconnect on all emotional levels, and as the movie progresses, they'll be a valiant ally. And actually, one source says that they too are massive fans of music and their dads, even if they are mad at them for something at first. In fact, maybe that's why they're so invested here. Looking similar to that concert finale, they finally get to witness their dads as successes playing music of all things. There's also a screenshot of them alongside Kid Cudi, our first confirmed historical figure, playing as himself in the film. So clearly they're connected at least a little more deeply. Heck, there's even one theory that they will be the true musical successors, as they are technically named Bill and Ted to a degree. And maybe this film was all about passing on the legacy to a new generation. Who knows, who knows. Alright, I've talked your ear off enough for one micro shot here. Here's the circuit of time once again as people travel through time, and while yes, there is already quite the visual upgrade as one would expect after 30 more years of cinematic CG tech, there is a bit of a missable detail here, and that is with the actual time-traveling device. I mean, you may have overlooked it, but it's not a phone booth. It's like a futuristic egg thing. And considering the phone booth is established, that means there are multiple time machines. Perhaps with this one connecting to the wrong future of Bill and Ted's failures. Maybe even this is what they're brought through with before discovering their original device in the garage later on, explaining the dazzled looks. Whatever the case, it's another piece to the puzzle, and we do see that the boys do use it at least once, and quite early on, judging by their faces. It's at this point they come to the idea of stealing the song they need to write from themselves, as they logically will have made it in the future, again in that guitar collection room. Here's a quick shot of what you'd normally expect from the circuits of time, a phone booth scene, and again, the boys are inside this one too. but I could pretty much bet that someone will take the egg one, unless it was just a one-time use to bump up the nostalgia factor of the phone booth reveal. We'll see. Also, I may be imagining it, but the phone booth looks more dodgy on the transition. There's not too many frames to look at it, but it seems damaged and sparky as usual, and Bill doesn't look too pleased to be in it. And hey, if you're liking my content so far, why not consider subscribing? Only you can help out with my unbalanced ratio count, and I'll be bringing more trailer analyses as they start to release more and more. So now they land at their destination. I've got questions about this upcoming scene, but first, here's a detour. Death! Returning from the second film, he at least seems very aware of the good times of Bill and Ted, even owning news articles and a leather jacket with wild stallions on the back. Now that's a real fan. And it seems to suggest Bill and Ted went back to hell. Oh. What does all this mean? I haven't got a clue. In the second film, the boys died, experienced hell, fought death in several games to reclaim their life, succeeded, approached God in heaven for help, and then returned to their bodies despite being thrown off a cliff. Where everything lines up here, I really don't know. Did they legitimately die a second time, only to of course get a free pass back to reality due to Death's favoritism? Whatever the case, things look gorgeous down here. And hey, with that scythe placed as a decoration, maybe Death's retired. I doubt it though. Also, evil birds in the background. We don't see Death again in the trailer, so whether he's a cameo appearance or will full-on join them for the rest of the adventure is up to speculation, but maybe he falls into the old friends category of helpers. But okay, speaking of old friends, there's still all sorts of other characters of the Bill and Ted world that we've yet to see anywhere in the trailer, many of which are also confirmed thanks to that trusty cast list. Most notably, the princesses, the two love interests of Bill and Ted, and the ones who marry and start a family with them by the end of the second film. Unfortunately, they don't return precisely with the same casting roles as the original, but still, they will be prevalent and understandably aged up too, with family issues and all. There's also confirmation of a new casting choice for Deacon, Ted's younger brother, whose actor is in his 30s, to give you an idea of how that'll look. And after that, it's basically the rest of Ted's family. Father Captain Logan, the antagonistic strict parent, and Missy, the promiscuous young stepmother, who swapped between the boys' dads, and by the second film credits, joined onto the worst side, picking Denomulus as her next partner. And though their ending seems to be shifted here, perhaps she still chooses to join the baddie again, with Anthony Carrigan so far casted as nobody named, but confirmed as an adversary to the boys. Okay, back to the trailer, we've come to the destination of Bill and Ted's solution, and oddly enough, it's prison, where we learn of future Bill and Ted's song choice. A lot more death than it is metal, with the ending of it literally being death, death, the end, and a whole lot of screaming. And of course, also to note, future Bill and Ted here, far more jacked up and intimidating than we've ever seen before. Clearly, in this reality, things didn't turn out quite as expected, but their song choice certainly unites their fellow prisoners. Their tattoos are similar references to their personalities and passions, but otherwise, it's clear they're not going to be a lot of help on this quest. But it might give an insight as to how things could go wrong, because presumably they've been arrested for something, you know? They got to avoid that. And really, the more I look at this, the more confused I kinda get. Because the trailer would leave us to believe that this is future Bill and Ted, but the two don't really look the slightest bit aged up from their middle-aged counterparts. I mean, maybe it's not far in the future, but it still looks very strange. It's almost like a full-on alternate reality of Bill and Ted, rather than later on down the line. But then that thought begs the question, what other realities are there to be seen? What other Bill and Teds exist out there? After all, the franchise has already established the original Bill and Ted across a couple timelines, evil robot Bill and Ted, as well as future bearded Bill and Ted, and now middle-aged Bill and Ted and macho Bill and Ted. Are there really more to be seen? Well, yes, or kinda no. This film does give us a hint of at least one other Bill and Ted appearance in this film, but it's one we all recognize. So a few months ago, there was actually a Walmart commercial for Bill and Ted Face the Music that just so happens to include a middle-aged Alex Winter, as well as a fully realized youthful version from the original as well. And if a simple Walmart commercial can pump in that kind of CG prowess, then you can imagine that that kind of technology can be transferred over with this new installment. Though the film only has a budget of $25 million, so maybe that idea is up for debate. But here's some more fuel to the fire of a young Bill and and Ted idea. Before the script was accepted, Ed Solomon also described a scene whereby middle-aged Bill and Ted would revisit outside Circle K and interact with their own teenage selves, as well as Rufus, making his absence a part of the story and fully addressed. Though he also suggested the teen characters would be played by their younger selves with archived footage, so hey, who knows. Still, if a Back to the Future 2-esque scene revisit were to be recreated, I would certainly enjoy every second of it. I just love that mechanic. So, okay, that's technically where the trailer ends off, but we've got that old finale scene to revisit, as there's a pretty gaping hole in the content of this film. What about all those historical figures of the past? Who are the growing team of helpers this time around? Funnily enough, the second film actually didn't get all too much into the time traveling stuff, and just focused on the afterlife and modern day, but this third installment is clearly a solid mesh of the two, and there are all sorts of hints that can be found. First things first, that first shot again. The concert crowd doesn't exactly tell us something new, but considering the second film's finale was just a small stage, yeah, this is definitely the new rendition of that, all scaled up. But as we jump to them actually playing, we can see in the background a mystical kind of light, and knowing that this song is set to save the universe now and reality itself, clearly there's a little more going on than just a nice tune. How exactly it fits together, obviously I'm not too sure, but how can Bill and Ted achieve this with their band? Well, obviously, two lead electric guitar players aren't gonna cut it, and we know the princesses can play the drums and piano, but have yet to make an appearance. There's also a strong possibility that the daughters too have some musical prowess, but let's look into the actual frame-by-frame footage, because it may just be my eyes searching for it, but when I look in the background of this same shot, I feel like I can see a recognizable police captain we've been following since the very original. I knew I could recognize that grumpy head anywhere.
Don't be impatient, Sonny.
Yes, in a bit of a twist in opinion, it looks like Ted's own father, Captain Logan, will be joining the band in his old age with what looks to be a clarinet. Guess his musical desire was suppressed all this time, or he picked it up in his old age. As for the character on the right, it looks to be an ancient Chinese musician playing a bamboo flute, or a dizi from her time period. And really, it just makes perfect sense that the ultimate band of all time features elements of iconic musicians from all across time, as it's literally a union of all of humanity's talents across all of existence, and maybe some non-humans too. There's also a keyboard in the background too. Now the one other shot we get of this scene is the two just rocking out in front of the beam of light. So hey, pretty great the trailer doesn't spoil all the details, but I'm still gonna try my best to pick out the secrets anyway. So let's get back to those historical figures. And though it's not all of them, presumably the cast list certainly hints towards a lot of confirmations and directions for the icons. So starting off, Kid Cudi, seen already in screenshots and the rest of it, he represents the fairly modern day musical world with his hip-hop-ish genre. I haven't actually heard him, but whatever. And though we do see a couple other musicians, the historical cast aren't limited to them only. After all, next one on our list is George Washington, father of all of the United States, and clearly the new replacement of Abraham Lincoln. And yeah, I couldn't find trivia on him being secretly musically inclined, so I guess that music theory isn't the best, but maybe they could just give him something anyway. Next up, a bit more broadly, we have a caveman, clearly taking the limits of time travel to their absolute limits. In fact, perhaps that's the guy we see over here. Still, again, kinda your new Genghis Khan of the brute ally from the original. Definitely a drummer, right? Or maybe he'd comically make a great violin or harp player. I'll stop that theory now. Another named historical icon we have is Bartholomew. Not just a Shakespeare character like my uncultured mind first went to, but one of the apostles of Jesus Christ. Really digging into that time travel concept, and considering the fact that God is confirmed to exist in the Bill and Ted world, I guess it only makes sense for his son's events to be visitable too. After that, the cast list gets a little more cryptic, with only extras credits hinting towards the actual context of certain destinations, such as, simply enough, Pharaoh, a ruler from the Egyptian period, meaning we'll likely visit ancient Egypt and pick someone up along the way. Cleopatra, King Tut, Moses for more religious imagery, or someone else entirely. Someone from Egypt will be likely making an appearance. On another note, we have a credited umpire, and throughout this trailer, there is no revealed sports scene, so really, this could go anywhere. Tennis, baseball, cricket, some famous sports guy is plausible, you know? After that, we have Revolutionary Soldier, presumably taking us to a scene during George Washington's time again, which, fun fact, includes a bunch of real-life veterans in their cast of extras. Beyond that, there's listings for a drummer, violinist, and mandolinist, another musician potentially based in Italy. There's a wedding guest that you'll never guess where they appear, a tough prisoner with the same fate, a rest home resistance, which kind of makes me think leads to Captain Logan again, as he must be getting on in years. years by this point. His actor's almost 80 years old IRL. And coming to the end, we've also got lead scientist, which at first I thought was a link to an Einstein-Newton type character, but could easily just be this scene here. And then there's a couple casted for the San Dimas SWAT team. How on earth things get to that point? Who has a clue? I guess it links to them getting arrested in prison, maybe. The only other name worth noting at this point is one that's a little off. Zenny. You shouldn't always trust IMDb cast lists, because they're usually pretty dodgy, but Zenny is different. Is this a nickname for someone like Buddha and his awfully zen aura? Or if that's the kind of area we're in, maybe it's this other ancient Chinese character again. But the casted actor isn't anywhere close to that ballpark. Is there a famous Zenny I'm missing? Whatever. Whatever the case, there's only 2 more people of note left, none of which are future allies anymore. First is Dr. Taylor Wood, a family therapist for the struggling heroes, and actor Billy Slaughter as someone unknown. My guess, another underling to the evil that is Anthony Carrigan's character. But other than that pretty much covers all there is to unearth about this upcoming Bill and Ted film. Other than the fact that some of us may be making an appearance too, with a social media appeal launching recently to submit clips of people rocking out, which will be used in the final film. Pretty rad. Bill and Ted is a wonderfully joyous experience, and though it is technically a bit dated with some of its filmmaking and certainly some of its attitudes, anyway, whatever the case, it's a nonsensical and silly fun romp through time with a couple of lovable idiots. And I have good faith that the well-intentioned heart behind this film will undoubtedly give us a fantastic return to form that'll only act as a happy upgrade to the fans of the originals, and open it up to a whole new generation of fans too. For now, I should probably stop rambling over a minute and a half of footage. My name's been Dazz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. Funny, I've been waiting for this trailer for a long time, but I hadn't actually seen the originals before researching this. I'm glad I did, but I was shocked to see some of the things that were in it, you know? I mean, I can't even say the words that they say anymore. YouTube and my own moral ground, but still, it's interesting. I enjoyed it though, good stuff.